Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to work on lesson 43. Make sure we are completing our assignments on a daily basis. Let's go ahead and begin. First word, what word? Dot. Next word, what word? Through. Next word, what word? Tough. Next word, what word? Enough. Next word, what word? Ought. Next word, what word? Brought. Let's look at part 2, boys and girls. First word, what's the underlined part? What word? Steering. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Returning. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Tiller. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Regain. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Probably. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Displeased. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Unlikely. Next word, what's the underlined part? What word? Balanced. Let's go ahead and look at part 3. We're going to go over vocabulary. Let's talk about what those words mean, boys and girls. First word, what word? Shad. A shad is a type of fish. Touch word number 2. What word? Bargain. When you try to buy something at a reduced price, you bargain for it. Let's go over part 4. Listen carefully to the words that we're going to go over. First word, what word? Floated. Next word, what word? Fortunately. Next word, what word? Unfair. Next word, what word? Remarked. Next word, what word? Evaporate. Next word, what word? Smolder. Next word, what word? Finally. Next word, what word? Smiling. Next word, what word? Handfuls. Next word, what word? Spotted. Next word, what word? Cheat. Next word, what word? Branches. Next word, what word? Pointed. Next word, what word? Argument. Next word, what word? Way. Next word, what word? Ways. Next word, what word? Wait. Next word, what word? Wait. Next word, what word? Attractive. So let's go ahead and begin with our story. The title of the story is A Smart Trade. Let's go ahead and begin. By noon the next day, they had completed the barge. It wasn't a very attractive barge, but it floated. The bottom of the barge was made up of 7 logs tied together. Each log was about 25 feet long. In the back of the barge was a tiller for steering. There was a small sail made of grass and vines and bark. And in the middle of the barge was a large box. The box was about 12 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 3 feet high. It would hold many, many fish. Bruce and a man named Jonas went out on the barge with nets and fishing lines. They planned to be gone for as long as a week, returning in time to trade for bananas. Fortunately, the barge didn't have to go far before the men spotted schools of fish. Most of the fish were more than 3 feet long. Jonas threw handfuls of small minnows into the water. Just then, Bruce had a fish on his line. It pulled so hard that it began to move the barge. "Drop your bait and help me with this fish," Bruce yelled. Jonas pulled in his line and grabbed onto Bruce's line. Finally, the contest was over and the men had a fish that was 10 feet long. It probably weighed more than 200 pounds. It was not a shad. It was a big blue tuna fish. That was the first tuna fish the men caught, but not the last one. Before the sun went down, they had 30 shad and 12 tunas. Most of the tunas were 6 feet long. However, one was even larger than the first one they had caught. Finally, the barge box was filled with tuna fish, but Jonah and Bruce did not have hundreds and hundreds of fish. They had only 42 fish. Jonas remarked, "We made a deal with a woman to trade 1 fish for 5 bananas, but most of these fish must be worth 100 bananas each. Some of them must be worth 500 bananas each." A week later, the woman and her friends returned to the island. They came in 3 boats. Each boat was loaded with bananas. When Bruce and Santa met them on the shore, Bruce was holding a pan full of minnows. Also in the pan was a fish that was about 12 inches long. This was the size of the fish the woman had traded for when she came to the island before. After Bruce and Santa greeted the woman and the others, Bruce held up the fish that was 12 inches long. Bruce said, "Do you remember what we said we would trade for?" "Yes," the woman said. "We said that we would give you 5 bananas for every fish." "Good," Bruce said. "This fish is worth 5 bananas, is that right?" "Yes," the woman said. She was smiling. Bruce held up one of the minnows. "And this fish is worth 5 bananas, he said. The woman stopped smiling. "Are you trying to cheat us?" she said. "That fish is not even a fish. I won't give you 5 bananas for that little thing." "You're right," Bruce said. "We must be fair." Bruce walked over to a scale that he made from 2 branches. The branches formed a T. Bruce placed the first fish on one of the T. Then he placed the rock on the other end, and the scale balanced. Bruce picked up the rock and said, "Why don't we call the weight of this rock 1 fish?" "That is fair," the woman said. "So you would have to place many of those tiny fish on the scale to balance the weight of the rock." "That is right," Bruce said. Then he signaled the others to bring out the largest of the fish from their sea cage. Bruce pointed to the big tuna. He said, "This fish weighs as much as 700 of these rocks. So we have to treat this fish as if it were 700 fish." At first, the woman looked displeased. Then she smiled and said, "That is fair, and that is a lovely fish." So after you're done watching the video, boys and girls, make sure you complete lesson 43. I will be checking for these assignments, making sure you all turn them in. Have a great weekend.